Most parents have never heard of the two stats that actually tell you where a player is going to end up. Today we're going to go over those, and we're going to talk about strike percentage and pitches per inning pitched, and how those kind of change over level to level and kind of location to location based on where you land in the game of baseball. So I do have some notes here, but one thing I want to touch on real quick is I'll try to share these visuals if I can figure out how to do all that stuff. But real quick, when it comes to pitches per inning by level, the best guess they can come up for high school is about 22 pitches an inning. For college, they're looking at 19 pitches per inning. For the minor leagues, we're at about 18.5 pitches per inning. And in the big leagues, they're at 16 pitches per inning. So you'll see that as you progress through the game, we keep getting better and better as we go. And then when it comes to strike percent, and this reason I want to lead with this here as well, is what we see is strike percent. We don't know what it is for high school, but we know that it's going to be pretty dang low considering how many pitches per inning they're throwing. But in college, the average is 58%. That's across all levels. Now, at the top 10 D1s, the average is about 62% strikes. And in the big league level, it is 64% strikes. So you can see those gaps keep getting smaller and smaller as you progress through levels. So one thing I wanted to touch on with that, the reason I'm going over this today is I actually had a player come over to me and he said, hey, my coach said I'm not going to be able to pitch unless we can be 75% strikes or higher. So I just want to touch on that, of how absurd that is, considering everything we just went over. The top 10 D1s in the nation are at 62%, and the best in the big leagues are at 64. So we need to keep that in mind. Yes, strikes are important, but we also need to be realistic about what we can do for strikes. So most people, they obsess over velocity. Obviously, I don't think that needs to really have a whole lot of discussion gone into it. And I'm going to have some bullet points that I keep looking into just so I try to stay on track as best as possible. Anyone who's actually talked to me knows that I will ramble and get on tangents, which is fine. But people obsess over velo. I love velo just as much as anybody. If you were on one of my last meetings, you know that I am a huge fan of it. I told everybody that velocity is one of the #1 predictors of success, but we don't want to sell out for velo. We want to make sure that we're progressing for velo with location. So we want to have our cake and eat it too. So command is going to be the separator once you start getting to those higher levels, because as soon as you're getting out of high school, most everybody's throwing hard. Yes, your fastballs, your velo is going to be what allows you to play at the next level, but your ability to throw it for strikes and use your whole repertoire, that's what allows you to keep playing at the next level. So today, strike percentage, pitches per inning, we're going to focus on that. It kind of tells you exactly where it is you're going to be able to compete, because again, I won't use names, but even at Northeastern last year, we had some players that threw in the upper 90s, but they weren't consistently throwing in the strike zone and we couldn't use them, right? So what strike percent actually is, so that's just strikes divided by total pitches. If it's called strike, swinging strike, foul ball, put in play, that all helps your strike percentage. It is not the same as just how hard can you throw. Like, yes, we want to be able to throw the ball hard, but we want to be able to control counts. We want to work ahead. And if you go back to a few lectures that I've done prior, we talk about the differences in counts and the difference between strike one versus ball one and how that changes the at-bat, and even 1-1 going into 2-1 or 1-2, right? How that swings 50 points for the hitter's average. So being able to throw strikes is a key aspect of importance. You have to be able to do it. After that, we want to look at level by level. And this is one of the most important things too, is there's a very high, what I would say, unrealistic standard for youth athletes, specifically at the travel ball and high school level, where they have this magical 75% number that even a majority of big leaguers aren't doing. But again, the junior college average is 59%. All of college baseball was 58. The Division I average as a whole was 60.9% strikes, and the best 10 D1s averaged 62% strikes. I'm pulling all this information just off TrackMan, and then the MLB average was 64. So it's also important to keep in mind that there is only roughly 8% of players that are going to go from high school to college baseball, and one of those reasons is just the ability to throw strikes. It's not because rosters are full. So I've heard a couple of people talk where it's, they don't think that's a fair number. I think it's very fair. And the reason for that is, I still do actively recruit players at the college level. I help players get placed at the college level, and a lot of it comes down to that a lot of rosters are still open for slots. They're not 100% full. So they're still looking for players. There's still openings and there's slots available. So the big thing that separates it is, getting into that first year of college baseball, roughly 8% of kids from high school will go in. And then the crazy part about it is it's roughly about 35% of those kids don't make it into year two. So that 8%, 35% of that 8% get let go after year one. And from a pitching standpoint, a lot of that doesn't come down to they didn't have the stuff, they didn't have the command, they didn't have the control to keep playing at that next level. So elite command is kind of what sets you apart. So the younger you are, I feel like you should be focusing more on the ability to command that fastball. And again, I have a whole bunch of information on that as well. And then as you get older, yes, you want velocity with command. Next thing we're going to touch on is pitches per innings pitched. It's something that oftentimes in my mind gets very overlooked. And the reason it gets overlooked is, again, I think we focus too much on velocity at this point in time, just as an industry as a whole. Even when you go on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it may be, the bullpen is always, 94, 96, 89. Great, where everyone's throwing harder. Yes, 100% across the board, every level people are throwing harder. And I don't remember the guy who does it, but he's actually pretty funny. But he'll show the video of the guy throwing in the bullpen, and it shows 96, and he just goes ball, right? So to me, yes, we need to understand pitches per innings pitched. That's going to be what I just call an efficiency stat. So pitches per innings pitched, just total pitches, just divided by how many innings you pitched. The lower that number, the better off you're going to be. It means that you're forcing contact or you're getting swing and misses in the zone. So one thing I want to touch on there, we already said the high school, the average was, we just can guess 22, probably more on the lines of 22, 24, somewhere in there. College is 19, and then minor league baseball is 18, and then the major leagues are 16 pitches per inning, 16.2. But you get the point. So there's a clean pattern. The higher level you progress, the lower the pitches per innings that you throw. So the big thing there is if you're throwing less pitches, you have less big innings. That's very important. So at Northeastern, we averaged 18.4, 18.5 pitches per innings pitched. And one of the reasons we did that was we focused on attacking the zone. That also led to us having the lowest walks in the conference, as well as a top 10 finish in K per nine, as well as strikeouts on the whole portion of the season, as well as we led the conference in strikeouts. And we had the lowest ERA and the lowest WHIP in the conference as well. So by focusing on just, forcing contact with the best stuff, we actually increased our strikeouts. So the two stats of strike percentage and pitches per innings pitched, those are 100% connected. The higher strike percentage you're going to have, the fewer big innings you're going to have. It's just really hard to hit at the end of the day. And if you can attack the zone consistently and go after players with good stuff. For the guys who are working with me on those month-long plans, we just had a presentation we did where we went over pitch shaping. And one of the reasons we want to have good pitch shapes, and again, velocity is key, but number one, let's get stuff to move first, and then we can always build velocity on top of that, is if we're able to have good movement and we attack the zone, our best case scenario is we're going to strike a guy out. Our worst case scenario is we're going to limit hard contact. So it's a win-win either way. And as we start to throw harder, not only do we give up softer contact, but we start getting more swing and miss. Because again, the harder you throw is a key indicator of whether you're going to get a swing and miss or not. So a high school arm at 22 pitches per innings pitch is burning just pitch count. And as you start doing that, and you start burning that starter out of the game and you get into the bullpen, especially at those lower levels, yes, it's going to give the other team a bigger opportunity to win. So over five innings, it's roughly 30 wasted pitches that you've gone over. So the reason that this matters is there's also a health aspect to it. And we're going to use me as an example, is I did not play professional baseball because I was the best in the world. It was because I was durable, I was efficient, I threw strikes, and I was consistent, right? And with that, I was able to keep progressing over time. So if I can play any form of professional baseball, I think anyone can when it comes down to it. So anyone who's met me knows, yeah, I did a lot with a very little. But the reason for that, again, is I focused on having the lowest pitches per inning that I could. I actually had a pretty decent strikeout rate, and I almost walked nobody. But the reason that I was able to do that is I was able to get more experience. So if I was able to keep my pitches low per inning, I'm going to have a manager that keeps sending me out there, which means I get more experience, more real-world expertise. Maybe next time what we'll talk about is kind of the difference between training and competing and how you both need to do. You need to do both of them realistically. But the pitchers that are going to advance are the ones who can do more with less. It's not always talent. I know we talked about that in a video previously, that talent is not the only indicator of whether someone's going to play at the next level or not. Some of it is just your ability to be consistent. So it's not just a simple mindset of throw more strikes. Again, we're going to reference back to a previous presentation on we want to throw more strikes with better stuff. And stuff is number one going to be how it's moving out of the hand. Can we spin the fastball? Can we put depth on a curveball? But then also, can we throw it a little bit harder? So velocity for me is number two, especially the younger the athlete is. So for us, we always like to look at, let's evaluate the athlete first. Where are they? We want to know how the ball moves out of the hand. How hard do they throw? Is there something that's limiting their velocity? If they already throw hard, then let's make sure the shapes are staying consistent and making sure we're getting it in the zone. So right there's two numbers that everyone ignores, which is that pitches per innings pitched and your strike percentage. To me, those are your most important aspects as a pitcher. You want to make sure you know where you stand on that. And then I'm going to kind of leave you with some of these things here I gave you those averages for, high school, college, pro ball, different things like that. Don't look at those and go, okay, this should be discouraging or even really encouraging when it comes down to it. Because if you're a soft thrower and you're above those averages, it might be okay to throw a few less strikes and focus on getting a little more velocity. If you're a hard thrower and you're below those averages, okay, well, how do we get you in the zone? So with that, we want to know where you're at, and that's where that evaluation comes in. Like if it is jumps that are limiting you, if it's arm strength that's limiting you, if it is sequence that is limiting you, or your ability to change directions, whatever it is, we want to make sure that we're impacting that. So the older you are, yes, your focus now becomes more, movement and velocity combined. The younger you are, that turns more into just, can you get the ball to move and command it? And then as you get older, yes, naturally you're going to hit, growth phases, hormones, start lifting weights and doing all these other things that are going to naturally help you increase velocity. But if you are, getting into high school and you're going into that freshman year and you're in those low 70s, probably want to start looking towards getting a little more velocity. And yes, the average velocity in high school is about 77 to 79 miles an hour. That is not an overly hard throw, but we also need to be realistic about it, because if your goal is to actually keep playing, then yes, you're going to have to throw harder, and yes, you're going to have to throw strikes. And this is where I drive everybody nuts, because you need to have your cake and eat it too, because that's what it takes to get to the next level. Again, I've coached at the next level. I've coached in the minor leagues. I've coached in the major leagues. I've coached in college. I've done all those things, and I've coached in high school. I obviously run things on the private side, so I kind of understand what it takes at every single one of those levels and how to help accomplish those goals. So not everything's ever going to be 100%, but the bottom line of it is it takes a lot of work. And I'll tell you right now, the biggest issue in baseball is we get sold the easy button mentality, but in reality, it's not easy. So there is a couple younger guys that I work with, and they're making huge progress. The older guys, yes, we have to be a little more aggressive with them. I have a couple seniors right now that, they've added 3-4 miles an hour already. They were already strike throwers, but you know what? We need to get more velocity for them to have the opportunity to play the next level. And just to kind of close this out, is I know this is going to frustrate somebody listening to what I just said leading into this with about velocity and strikes, but I have a player, I won't use his name, but he's had about 5 or 6 schools tell him he's left-handed, and they've told him, look, if you threw 4 miles an hour harder, man, we'd have a spot for you right now, but you just don't throw hard enough to play college baseball. His pitch shapes, everything are fantastic. So for him, we are putting him on a weighted ball program, and one of those rare occurrences that I push someone pretty aggressively on a weighted ball program. There's, you need to make sure your development plan fits the actual goal of what somebody wants to sign, right? So the awful thing when it comes to baseball is we're all commodities to be bought and sold, and we need to understand that yes, we have this vision of what it is we want to do, but also there's a team that's going to have to sign you at some point. And hopefully this is offensive. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But at a certain point, dad and his buddies stop coaching your team, and you're going to have to play for the high school, or you're going to have to play for the college, or if you want to play professional baseball, it doesn't go that far. You're going to have to start understanding that there's other people's opinions out there. There's other people's opinions other than mine as well. I'm just helping you get on a path to understand what it takes to actually go to that next level. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out. If I offended somebody, sorry, I guess maybe not, because I feel like I'm being pretty honest with everybody. But at the end of the day, just make sure that you have a plan that fits your specific goals and is being realistic, because, you want to make sure you have people in your corner that are pointing you in the direction, that know where you need to go, and are going to challenge you on your beliefs and your ideas, and understand that, yes, you need to throw strikes, but yeah, you also have to throw hard, and yeah, you also have to make that ball move if you really want to play at the next level. So again, that was just a little video there going over, kind of just strike percentage and pitches per innings pitched. If you have questions, feel free to reach out.